Welcome Provo Peak Ninth Ward. We're going to do some Sunday school videos and post them here on YouTube. And today we've got the Come Follow Me lesson. So this is Alma 53 through 63. And we've got Marin, one of our Sunday school teachers, who's going to kind of lead the lesson / discussion for us today. So we'll go ahead and turn the time over to Marin.
Thanks, Anders. I was thinking when we started working on this and kind of putting it together, how much I've actually struggled to do a consistent study during quarantine, coronavirus. I just feel like it's actually been really hard. And so I think that like with these videos, our hope is that we can have some connection with each other, and hopefully we help each other just kind of be excited to study the scriptures and reach out to each other. And so if you have thoughts or questions or comments or things you wanted to talk to us about, please feel free. I would love any encouragement to continue studying my scriptures with you and by myself. I feel like I was talking to everybody about it before, and then the world kind of changed and shifted, and I'd like us to kind of be a support to each other in strengthening each other wherever we are on our journey in the scriptures. So with that said, these are just going to be short little sections that we talk about. This isn't going to be too long. These are just kind of the things that jumped out to me in these chapters, and I sent these guys a few questions to think about and to ponder as we started this discussion. And as I went through those 10 chapters, I feel like, of course, the stripling warriors story always jumps out to me, but it jumped out differently to me this time. And so I wanted to just ask kind of a funny question, I guess, is when you think of the stripling warriors, what image comes to your mind? What are you guys like? This is what I think about. It can be like a piece of art that you've seen, or even the words. LJ, you go first.
I like, I don't know how old that means. Like when we say stripling warriors, I don't know how like the age range of these kids, but I say kids because I think of them as kids, and then like very little life experience, and had a lot to be afraid of, but faced it anyway, and use their faith to overcome whatever those things that they might have been afraid of.
Yeah. Dustin, what do you think physically when you think about the stripling warriors?
Yeah.
Like if you were to like physically explain them, you'd be like, this is what I think.
Sure. 6'3", muscle bound, deep tan. Yeah, probably influenced by like church art that I've seen, but I think of like young, strong, courageous men.
Okay, that's actually funny because that was what I thought about. Like forever, that's what I've thought about, is like just like these super muscly, ripped guys kind of a thing. And as I was going through it this time, I connected more with like the person that LJ is talking about, because I Googled, I was like, how old are the stripling warriors? And it really was like they were thinking maybe 15, they could be younger, they could be older.
Wow.
And so then I started thinking about the 15-year-olds that I know, like in that range. And I was thinking about like all the kids that play on our street. They're in that range. And it was saying that they were strong and they were active. And so then I was still even trying to think of like a strong 15-year-old, 18-year-old. I was like, they still seem so small in my mind, right? Like when I really do think about that. And then I looked up the word stripling, and it really was like youth, just passing from boyhood to manhood, like a lad. And so I was just like, oh my gosh, like that shifts things when I think of them as these smaller boys going into this battle to protect their father's covenants. That changed things, because I thought, yeah, when Helaman's talking about how brave they are, and he talks about that a lot, right? I think that's a word that comes up regularly, is how brave these young kids were. And I thought, yeah, when I see them as these smaller boys, I thought, that is really brave. And they were showing up feeling probably really inadequate for their for that calling or for that job. And I just thought how brave it was for them to show up imperfectly. And that was kind of one of the questions that I asked you guys to come prepared with was, how do you learn how to show up imperfectly? Anders, I'll go with you first.
Yeah, and that is a good question, and I think it's something that's kind of hard. I don't necessarily know how you learn how to do it other than just kind of doing it. And I feel like with a lot of things, especially a lot of like church type things,
Yeah.
I feel like callings and ministering and stuff like that, I feel inadequate for the task, and and kind of in the process of just going and doing it, sometimes you feel like you can kind of learn what to do, or you get some help, and so just kind of doing it,
Yeah.
just being willing to show up or participate in whatever it is. There's a chance for you to kind of grow and learn in that process.
Yeah, I agree. And I feel like I teach spin and I teach yoga, and I try to make it a really big deal to the class before we begin. I say to them, I'm like, you showed up. That is really hard and scary to do, especially if you've ever been to my spin class. But no, I really do feel like acknowledging that it's hard sometimes and being like, I'm just gonna come. You know what I mean? I'm just gonna show up. LJ, did you have anything else like about learning how to show up in hard situations or imperfectly?
Yeah, I think I've had some pretty cool examples in my life of people that aren't afraid to expose their flaws. People go out of their way to show their flaws, but people that just show up, they know they're flawed, and they know that everybody else is too, and maybe that's part of what gives them courage. But seeing other people do it, and how comfortable it makes me being around people like that, that's inspiring to me to kind of be that, to try to be that presence for other people. Be like, look, I got flaws, I'm imperfect, and you can be too, and we can show love for each other just the way that we are, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of a hackneyed comparison that we use in the church sometimes, but talking about church being I don't know if that might have been too soft. Talking about church being a hospital for sinners rather than a museum for righteous people, where you go look at righteous people. I've always liked that comparison because it does. Like, I could show up to sacrament meeting and think about the things I need to be better at, rather than feeling like I need to be an example of somebody that's keeping all the commandments perfectly and things,
Yeah.
because the atonement is for all of us, and
Yeah.
we all need it equally.
I really do love that idea of showing up to church like as a hospital for everybody, right? Like, my sins might not be seen to everyone, but it's like, yeah, like I still need to go and check in with what my thoughts were, or my experiences with how I treated people, or you know what I mean, that kind of idea that it's like we all struggle, and seeing people and giving them generous interpretation to be like, they're not perfect and I'm not perfect. And I really do feel like fighting that perfectionism helps us to show up, right? To be like,
Yeah.
I'm not perfect and nobody else here is perfect either.
Yeah, I think so. I definitely think so. Just that, some some sins are just more visible than others, right?
Yeah.
But we all rely on the atonement equally, or we all need it. We need to rely on it equally.
Yeah. The next little part that I loved about this, I was talking to my sister about it, and she brought this part up to me, that was in Alma 57, 25. So it's like, I love this imagery of these kids showing up, right? Where like, it's just like such a brave thing where you're kind of like, they were showing up, and they were showing up imperfectly and very weak. But it was saying that 200 of the 2,060 had fainted because of the loss of blood. So they showed up and it was hard, but I liked this part at the very end. It was said, there was not one soul of them who did perish, yea, and neither was there one soul among them who had not received many wounds. So it was saying like nobody died, but not one of them left without some sort of battle wound, right? Like some sort of injury. I think sometimes we expect, because we did show up, for life to all of a sudden be kind of easy, right? Like it's kind of like, hey, I made it to church, so now like the rest of the week should be great. Or I said my prayers, or I read my scriptures, kind of a thing. Like I did this thing, I shouldn't come out without any suffering or pain. And I actually think that that's kind of a beautiful opportunity for us to learn empathy, is when we show up knowing that it's like, it's gonna be hard and you're not gonna come out unscathed. It's, you know, like, I just remember going on my mission thinking, I'm gonna be so good at this. And then getting there and I was like, oh my gosh, I suck at this really bad. And it was like such a humbling experience. And it took a lot more like pain and humility for me to finally get to this place that I was like, oh, I need help. You know what I mean? And I feel like I left with connection. I feel like I left with a connection to God, to Christ, to other people. I left with compassion, but I also had more courage in my life. And so I think that this is a beautiful story for us to kind of look at things that are scary to us, ministering, reaching out to people that are in need, and showing up imperfectly still. And I feel like before we move on to the kind of next segment, was when I was pregnant with Ruth, I was really sick and I was really sad and it was really hard. And the lady that ministers to me, who's not an active, you know, she doesn't come every Sunday, and she, you know, she knows that, but she showed up and she was like, I don't bake, but I can mow your lawn. And I thought it was so beautiful for this person who's not participating regularly in our church to say, I know that this person's hurting and I don't know what to do, but I can do something. And I think it was a beautiful example for me to just say, when I know that somebody's hurting, or I get that like thought to help someone, I should do it. And I should be okay if I don't do it perfectly. And so that was just kind of one of the thoughts that I loved about this scripture. And I didn't want to pass up an opportunity to talk about women, because there's not a lot of women in the scriptures. And so it was kind of one of those things that I thought, we've got to talk about the mothers, but not just mothers. I want to talk about the women, because sometimes our value as women is wrapped up in motherhood. And I think that there's a lot of women out there that aren't mothers, that are super valuable to us, that have so much to share and teach us. And so when I think about this, I want to think about this as women in general. And my question was to these guys is, well, I just already said that, but like these women were so valuable. If we see what they did for these young boys, they taught them how to show up, to be brave, and to do these really hard things. And I thought about how cool that was that those women did that. And then I thought, how are we supporting the women in our lives? How are we creating that narrative still today, so that women are helping and their voices are being heard? And so that's my question. Dustin, we'll start with you.
I think there are a lot of ways that you can do that, and the place to start probably for most of us is just within the walls of our own home. So that means if you have children, if you have a daughter, you know, from a young age, really supporting self-expression and just kind of relentless and unwavering support in whatever path they might choose. I think also there's a lot to be said about how we speak about women within our family. So speaking glowingly and with admiration of strong women. So that could be public figures, historical women, teaching our kids about these women who have done amazing things, speaking glowingly about them, and then of course also about, you know, the women in our home, a daughter, a sister, a wife or mother, and not being hesitant to point out the amazing qualities to your children that their mother possesses, and celebrating whatever achievements she may have professionally, spiritually, in the community, whatever. So anyway, I think we can have a lot of influence just starting in our home, in the way that we talk about women, how we teach about women. Yeah.
I love that. I really do love, I feel like for me personally, the more that I've looked into the history of the women in my life, I feel like I can do more things. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh my gosh, like she did this really hard thing. I can do this hard thing. You know what I mean? To have those examples of strong women that are doing hard things. Whether that be in or out of the home, I feel like it's, like you were saying, supporting women in having a voice, right? And doing that. Anders, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I was thinking a little bit about for work. I get to be around a lot of startup companies, and it's so there's a lot of men in the startup world, but there's also down at the startup building where I work, there's some companies that are founded and run by women, and so part of what I like to do is just like help kind of share my network with them, and you know, whatever it is they're working on, be able to kind of connect them with other people that are doing similar things or that could be kind of helpful, and it's really cool to work around people that are starting up new companies, and so that's been a really fun experience for me to see, just like people starting companies and working on really cool things, and just being able to be a small part of that and kind of help them make connections that could be valuable.
Yeah, I think that that's a really cool opportunity, actually, to kind of see that and recognize that you're like, this is kind of dominated by men.
Yeah.
How can we help support somebody that's kind of smaller or newer or you know, doesn't have as many connections? LJ?
One thought that I had, and we don't know for sure, but I think, you know, if we're looking at previous chapters in Alma and who these people are, who the Antonifa Lehis are, where the stripling warriors come from, I think the chances are pretty good that a lot of these mothers that they refer to are single moms. I think that they probably had a lot of dads that were killed in battle. Sometimes I think I read that, and when I read, like, you know, we did not doubt our mothers knew. I think when mothers, I think that also kind of implies sisters, aunties, right? But I think that's a significant possibility that a lot of these mothers are probably single mom, because I think it shows that you don't have to be in the ideal situation to be able to have like a huge influence. I mean, the influence that these kids had for like the trajectory of the Book of Mormon. I mean, you can't really measure that, right? Which is kind of the nature of like the power of women. Like you can't measure it. There's no way to really measure it. But I think that whether you are in the so to speak, like the ideal situation, or if you're not, I think it really starts with what Dustin was saying. Just like everything else in the gospel, I think it starts in your heart, and it starts in the walls of your own home. Whatever difference you want to make in your community and outward in the world starts in your heart. In your home.
I agree. Thank you. I feel like I was thinking just about what has helped me feel like I have a voice, because sometimes I think it feels like women are sometimes voiceless, and I think it really is knowing that we have men that are going to ask for women's help. You know what I mean? That are going to say, you know what, maybe we should ask some of the women what their thoughts are. You know, very much like including and listening to us, and knowing that we have value and thoughts and ideas that will just be different, right? From not better, but just different from our experiences. And I think that that's just an important thing that this kind of shows us again is that value that women have, and the effect that they can have on our generations and the future generations. And so thank you guys for letting me be a part of this. But no, I just wanted to close with, again, my testimony of, I love the Book of Mormon. I just love it. It has connected me to God and to Christ in so many cool ways. But I love these stories. I love Alma. I'm sad to be leaving him without really having got to dive into it. I just feel like there's so much that we can apply and learn that will help us be braver in our lives, that can help us in those scary moments, that will help us be stronger. But I also think that these stories can help us be kinder to other people and to ourselves. And so I hope that that this week you will feel a little bit braver in showing up in those scary moments, that you'll be okay with showing up imperfectly, and knowing that in our imperfections we can connect with each other, we can feel more compassion and empathy for each other, and that way we will feel less alone, and hopefully we will feel more of God's love for ourselves and for each other. And I say that in the name of Christina.
Amen. Awesome. Thanks so much, Marin. And we're going to try to do a video every week. So next week we'll have LJ teaching, leading the discussion, and try to get these emailed out to everyone. So thanks for joining us and watching. We'll see you next week.